The big topic in the MMA news is about the big card in April, right? Every 7 years we get a card like this that's supposed to be like some kind of celebration for how far the organization has gotten, so they're going to deliver with all these fights. The card is supposed to be catered somewhat to the casual audience, so they're going to have some kind of big name on the card. Usually that's what they do. With 100 they had Brock Lesnar and GSP. Second one, they were going to have Jon Jones. They were going to have Conor McGregor at one point, and then they also had Brock Lesnar as well. For 300, that's the only thing lacking on the card, is that big, huge name to garner the casual audience so they can inflate their pay-per-view sales, right? Without that big name, the card is never going to sell that big. And Dana is hyping up that main event so much that he even says the fans are going to be blown away with that fight. So incoming news on Leon versus Belal 2 headlining UFC 300. I almost fell asleep. Just the thought of that hit you like NyQuil. I can't believe they might actually make that the main event, because we got 2 title fights and Leon already said he's going to fight on the card. There's no way Leon versus Belal is going to blow anybody away, right? They'll blow everybody away to bed. CM Punk's return, fights Logan Paul in the ladders match. You know, they did merge with WWE, so we might see a ladders match or even slap fight. What if we get a slap fight main event? I wonder which one would bring more excitement, Leon versus Belal or Nate Diaz versus Dana in a slap fight. Honestly, I don't know what it could be if it's not Conor McGregor. If it's not Conor, it's not going to blow anybody away. Even a fight as good as Dricus and Adesanya, it's a great fight, but that's not a fight where all the fans are going to go insane about, right? It has to be Conor. I've gone down the list of the current active fighters. I've looked at the retired fighters. I don't know what else it could be. It has to be Conor versus somebody. It has to be Conor versus Chandler. Conor's teasing it, but he's always doing that. Looking at the roster, it doesn't seem like there's anybody left. Jon Jones fights or, he faked his injury and he's going to be fighting Tom Aspinall. I don't know. There is no fight that I think we're missing here. There's no fighter that's, unless it's like Brock Lesnar comes back, but even that is kind of expected at this point. He did it twice, or he performed for both 100 and 200. And that guy's so old at this point. There's no way he's going to be on this card. The main event has to be Conor versus someone. Conor versus Chandler or Conor versus Nate 3. Nate is also talking about fighting on that card. That is the only main event at this point that's going to blow anybody away. And it will be a massive, massive pay-per-view card if they're able to do that. Other than him, I don't know what else is there, really. Even with some of the retired fighters, I don't know what else is there. Khabib is not going to fight during Ramadan. Islam's not fighting during Ramadan. GSP's old. I don't know any other retired fighter that could come back and wow the audience. Izzy versus Dricus would be cool, but that's not meeting up with what Dana is hyping here. Jones versus Aspinall would be crazy, but we know Jones is injured, and he wants to fight Stipe instead. Pereira versus Adesanya again? Maybe? Would that be big enough? Out of all the current title fights, that is the biggest one you could put on. Pereira versus Adesanya 3 is the biggest title fight you could put on for that card if it's not Conor McGregor or Jon Jones. Now, you might be wondering, how can Conor headline a card in a non-title fight? It's Conor. They'll just create the McGregor belt or something, soaked in proper 12. Or they might announce a new division, like the 165-pound division, just for Conor to fight for a vacant belt, become the triple champ. That'd be a way to sell it. If Dana cannot deliver with that main event, I don't think he should be promoting it like that, right? Because he's going to get the fans' hopes up for nothing. If he doesn't have that kind of main event and it happens to be Leon versus Belal, he should have just promoted the card as, it's a really good pay-per-view card. Not, it's the best thing you've ever seen and every single fight is going to blow you away. But of course, Dana is going to do stuff like that. He's going to want as much attention on this card as possible because the hardcore fans are going to watch it regardless. No matter how much they don't like some of the fights or not, they're still going to watch it. So therefore, they're only trying to target the casual audience. The fact that Justin and Max and Charles and Armin are on the card, the hardcore fans are watching. Like, they're not skipping this card. So Dana's just trying to grab the casual audience and make their expectations so big. But they're not going to be so up to date with the card. They're hearing Dana saying how great it's going to be. They mark it on their calendar. They're going to see what the main event is. And then they're going to watch it. They don't care about all the other fights because they don't know most of these other fighters, right? They know Justin, they know Max a little bit, they know Charles, they know Yuri a little bit, they know Wei Lee a little bit. Sterling's the guy with the DQ and just got knocked out by Sean O'Malley. They know Holly Holm's name and they probably have heard of Jessica Andrade, maybe when she slammed Rose Namajunas. Maybe. But is UFC 300 really as disappointing as some of the fans are making it out to be? So far, there are 11 fights, and usually we get up to 14. I don't really see this going over that limit. And I'm going to say, man, just for a pay-per-view card, I think this is really, really good. It's rivaling 299, which is also an amazing card. So far, 1 championship fight. Technically 2, if you count the BMF title, which is just a made-up belt. And we have a ton of current and former champions on the card. There are 10 champions on this card, which is more than even UFC 200, which had the likes of Miesha Tate, Brock Lesnar, DC, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Cain Velasquez, Johnny Hendricks, and TJ Dillashaw. For UFC 300, we have Zhang Weili, Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira, Yuri Prochazka, Aljamain Sterling, Deiveson Figueiredo, Cody Garbrandt, and Holly Holm. And we have some great fights as well. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway can become one of the best fights of the year. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. It's a good fight. I think it's going to be one-sided. On the bright side of that fight, it's going to show Zhang Weili's skill set and what she could display in front of the audience. And a lot of people do like Zhang Weili too. Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan could be an absolute insane fight. This fight has title implications on who fights Islam Makhachev next, before or even maybe after he decides to jump to 170. Yuri Prochazka and Rakic, depending how Rakic approaches this. Sometimes he's exciting like when he fought Jimmy Manuwa. Sometimes he's not, like how he fought Thiago Santos. Kelvin Kattar welcoming Aljamain Sterling to the featherweight division is a magnificent fight. I did want to see Aljamain versus Max, but we do have both fighters on the card regardless. So the more the merrier with these two, right? And Kelvin Kattar should be a really good test for Aljamain's first UFC featherweight fight. Bo Nickel is going to be on the card as well. Always excited to see that prospect, and a lot of people seem to think that he should get some kind of like ranked fighter or veteran or somebody with more experience. But we have to remember that Bo Nickel is one of the most inexperienced fighters on the roster right now. He only has 5 total fights, 2 of those in the UFC, and people already wanted to see him against some kind of ranked fighter or veteran. He is not near that yet. He should not be getting a veteran or a ranked fighter unless the UFC just hates him. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt is a knockout waiting to happen. I don't like Garbrandt's chances. I don't think it's a great fight, but it's probably going to be the most explosive finish on the card. Deiveson could really show his finishing ability in that bantamweight division against someone like Cody. Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. So I understand a lot of the backlash about this fight. Holly Holm is over 40 years old. She's been in the game way too long. And why is she always on these big cards? I understand that whole narrative, and she's not fun to watch. But the main reason why Holly Holm is on the card is because the casual fans know her name. They're still riding that Ronda Rousey wave, right? And that will never go away. Holly Holm will always be tied to Ronda forever. She's not going to be a big star that could sell the fight herself, but every casual fan that looks at the card, they're going to know, oh, Holly Holm's on it. That's going to be pretty cool. And who's this Kayla Harrison girl? Oh, she's a gold medalist in the Olympics. In judo, the same thing that Ronda Rousey did? That's going to be a really cool fight. This is the reason why Holly Holm and Kayla Harrison's on the card. Welcoming Kayla Harrison is pretty cool for her first UFC fight. It looks like it's either going to be sink or swim for Holly Holm in this one. It seems like they're going to try to build Harrison off of Holly Holm's name if she could get this win here. Because if she beats Holly Holm, she is very close to a title fight. And honestly, it's the best fight to build Kayla Harrison off of. For the hardcore fans, this is not a great fight for UFC 300, but it is a business move by the UFC. Number one, they got Holly Holm as a recognizable name, and number two, they could build Kayla off of her in front of that large audience. We have Sadiq Youssef versus Diego Lopez, which I think is a better fight than Holm and Harrison. This is a fine fight. This is like what you'll usually see on the prelims or an early prelims of another pay-per-view. You might see something like this on a main card for a fight night. It's a great one. I talked about it in my podcast. I think Sadiq Youssef is a good test for Diego Lopez. Diego's not young. He's 29 years old. He has almost 30 professional fights, so they're going to be rushing his UFC career a little bit with Sadiq Youssef. Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. I think it's a great fight, especially for the early prelims, and I'm not going to lie, watching the sport for so long, it's very weird to see Andrade on the early prelims. But it's a testament to how big this card actually is. Andrade is one of the most, if not the most exciting women's fighter out there. She always goes for the finish. She's very physically imposing. She always presses the action, and Marina Rodriguez is a good dance partner to bring on a very good fight. These two are some of the more exciting female fighters on the roster, and they're putting them together, which is going to be a pretty good one. I think this could even win fight of the night. It's either this or I would say Gaethje and Holloway. And then you also have Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, the fight of the veterans. Jim Miller is on UFC 300. That is enough to get me excited about it. These two guys have never fought each other before, but they have been scheduled to fight each other multiple times. They've been in the UFC the longest, man, and fought the who's who of the lightweight division. Bobby Green might be coming back a little too soon after that knockout loss. Jim Miller's on a roll, so I don't like it for Bobby Green's sake. He may not have recovered from that horrible loss to Jalen Turner. So I would say the best fights on the card so far. I think Justin Gaethje versus Max is the best fight. I think Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan is the second best fight. I think Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez is the third best fight. Yuri and Rakic afterward. Kattar and Sterling is going to be really cool. Bobby and Miller is going to be pretty cool as well. And I'm really wondering what's going to be the main event of this card, because Leon Edwards did say that he is fighting on UFC 300. We already have these essentially 2 title fights on the card, and they are treating Justin Gaethje as a champion. So we'll see. Leave in the comments below, what do you guys think about UFC 300? Do you like it so far? You think it's disappointing? Or what do you think the main event is going to be? Make sure to leave in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.